Looking for ways to keep busy? Why not get in touch with your inner child with director Spike Jonze' adaptation of Where the Wild Things Are?
Or lonely guys looking for a date may want to sneak a peek at Jennifer's body.
But if you do, instead of going yourself, you might want to consider sending a surrogate.
Grab the popcorn and settle in. It's time for Slick Flicks.
Welcome to this edition of Slick Flicks. I'm Patrick Gibbs.
I'm Yelena Baykova.
And I'm Paul Gibbs, returning to the show after a brief hiatus for a kidney transplant. Very happy to be back. We've got some interesting films to review today, including Where the Wild Things Are, and then we're going to give you another look at Salt Lake Community College Film Department in action as we turn the tables and let you review one of our movies, a student film made by Patrick, Yelena, and myself.
But first up, we're going to take a look at the Bruce Willis science fiction thriller Surrogates. Tell us, Patrick, is this film worth seeing in person?
Yes, tell us, Patrick, is this film worth seeing in person?
Yes, I will tell you. What if you could live an active professional and social life without ever leaving your home? What if you could experience the rush of adrenaline that comes from thrill-seeking behavior, going to new places, and experiencing new things without ever risking the slightest element of danger? And what if Bruce Willis had wavy blonde hair? These are just a few of the mind-blowing questions posed by director Jonathan Mosto's science fiction thriller Surrogates. In 2017, humans live in near total isolation, rarely leaving the safety and comfort of their homes, thanks to the remotely controlled robotic bodies that serve as surrogates, designed as better-looking versions of their human operators. Because people are safe all the time and damage done to a surrogate is not felt by its owner, it is a peaceful world free from fear, pain, and crime. Agent Tom Greer, played by Bruce Willis, is a federal agent who, through the use of his own surrogate, investigates the first murder in years. The victim is college student Jared Cantor, who happens to be the son of Dr. Lionel Cantor, the original inventor of surrogates. Dr. Cantor, is portrayed by James Cromwell, uses multiple surrogates and actually lent one to his son the night the murder took place. Which begs the question, was the murderer gunning for Jared or for his famous father? The case grows even more complicated when several police officers are murdered when the surrogates are destroyed, something which is not supposed to happen, as the human operator is supposed to be completely safe from the damage done to his or her surrogate. Surrogates is an engaging and well-acted sci-fi mystery that sadly finds itself more than a bit lacking in originality, owing a great deal to other films of the genre, most notably Minority Report and I, Robot. In addition, it's quite predictable and features a multitude of plot holes and unanswered questions that don't make a lot of sense if you actually stop to think about them. It does, however, keep the viewer entertained enough to make these criticisms a lot less overwhelming than they could be. And while director Mosto, who gave us Breakdown, U-571, and the inferior third Terminator film, deserves kudos for his adept handling of the action and atmosphere of the piece, the lion's share of the credit for this film, being as enjoyable as it is, goes to Bruce Willis, who is so gifted at bringing a sense of earnestness and vulnerability to his endless parade of unlikely hero roles that to this day, there are actually some people out there laboring under the delusion that Unbreakable was a good film. Some of the other supporting performances are nicely handled, including Cromwell's enigmatic scientist and former Bond girl Rosamund Pike as Greer's wife. Ving Rhames proves to be rather silly as a dreadlock-sporting New Age religious figure called the Prophet, though as much of this can be attributed to the character and to the direction as Rhames' performance itself. On the whole, if you enjoy science fiction mysteries and action, you could do a lot worse than Surrogates. But you could also do a lot better. I give the movie a B-.
I think I'd give it a C. I'm in very close to the same range. I enjoyed this movie enough. This is kind of an ideal dollar movie. Go see it under those circumstances. For me, a science fiction thriller like this, so much of the fun is thinking about it. It's kind of like a brain teaser, and this one had a lot of logic flaws that bothered me.
You know, the logic flaw that keeps that really kept nagging at me days later is, okay, we have no murders anymore because of surrogates. Everybody knows, everybody's just sitting at home in their chair,
Exactly.
vegetating.
Yeah.
You know what?
You're going to have an epidemic of burglars.
Yeah, break into somebody's house while they're sitting there and their surrogate is out somewhere, and take all their stuff.
And then kill
them
them
if you want to. It's easy.
Actually, when I was watching the movie, I kind of felt the same, like, unrealisticism as I did with District 9, where it was like a funny little fun fantasy film, but there were a lot of logic holes that were kind of fun to break apart later.
I could see that, but ultimately I thought District 9 was a great film.
You know, I know that all these movies are really unreal, but sometimes I feel like saying, you know, it was too unrealistic. Like,
I agree. There are cases where I'm sorry.
And Surrogates was exactly the same thing, where it had way too many holes. And exactly how is having surrogates going to stop crime? I didn't see how that related at all.
And just some of the realistic mechanics of how this works. Bruce Willis hasn't gone outside in his own physical body in quite some time in this film, and yet he still seems to be in perfectly good shape.
Yeah.
And these surrogates work in such a way that you have enough control over your muscles that when Bruce Willis wants to separate from the surrogate, he can just reach up and pull the thing off his head, and yet when you cut away to showing Bruce Willis as the surrogate to him lying there in the chair, he's not talking. Reflexively, if your brain is talking, your mouth is going to talk. If you have enough physical control that you can make your hands move, your mouth is going to move.
Actually, maybe not. Maybe not.
True.
Anyway.
We do have an example right here of somebody who can talk without their brain
any brain function
working at all.
Thank you.
But
But the point here is that the brain is functioning enough to control the arms, but it doesn't control the mouth.
I understand your point. There were just a lot of things like that that really just didn't add up to me. Now, that being said,
the film was entertaining.
The film was entertaining.
It wasn't fantastic.
I really enjoyed the actor who played James Cromwell's main surrogate. I thought did an exceptional job of getting his speech patterns and everything down. It was like, if I hadn't known that James Cromwell was playing that part, I still would have thought, that guy's doing an impression of James Cromwell. He did it that well. And I'll say the reason why I fluctuated between a C- and a B, the reason why I give it a B is because I thought those two sequences of Bruce Willis in the sanctuary chasing down the guy, and the sequence where they're running along the cars, and those big sort of Terminator-esque action sequences were just fun. Were fun enough.
I agree.
That to me it was.
My favorite performance was when he starts beating up on the surrogate of the other guy who's flirting with his wife, because it really showed his frustration, his anger, and how irrational.
That was a good sequence, and Bruce Willis was very good in this movie. I wish the film had been better. I remember some of Jonathan Mosto's early films like Breakdown and U571 that may not have been truly great films, but they were very entertaining, and they felt, you kind of felt the enthusiasm of the director in those, and they were just more fully realized. These last two films he's done, Terminator 3 and Surrogates, feel a bit kind of perfunctory to me.
Exactly. They're competent, but nothing more. It feels like he's lost the love of filmmaking. I just have to say before we wrap up that the whole Ving Rhames character, the posters and everything, the whole feeling of this prophet who was a really odd cross between Bob Marley and Barack Obama, just made me laugh
I never thought of the Barack Obama reference, but the Bob Marley that I saw.
Well, if you saw the posters of him on the wall.
Yeah.
In the end, Surrogates was an enjoyable film, not a bad film at all, but just really not a great film.
Yeah, in no way exceptional.
It was okay. Next up, we've got the latest movie showcasing the alleged talents of future footnote Megan Fox in the horror flick Jennifer's Body. Helena, is this a body worth checking out?
Well, Jennifer's Body is about a cheerleader who is possessed by a demon and goes around eating high school boys to stay beautiful and strong. her best friend discovers the truth about her and decides to stop the evil. Obviously, the perfect choice to play the role of Jennifer was cast to Megan Fox. She is such a strong symbol of sexy these days that it's only a small step to make her also demon-possessed. The best friend is played by Amanda Seyfried, whom we would recognize from Mamma Mia, except she so well plays the part of pathetic, needy friend, hence the name Needy, that at first I couldn't recognize where I'd seen her before. She does an excellent job of first playing needy and weak to finishing the film with a strong kick, pun intended. I thoroughly enjoyed the film. The script was written by Diablo Cody, the same woman who won an Oscar for writing Juno. The movie Jennifer's Body is filled with misplaced humor and witty remarks, which I find hilarious. But some people, mostly those with a confining and limited understanding of humor, might say the film wasn't entertaining at all. Also, if jokes of sexual nature make you squeamish and uncomfortable, I recommend you stay home with your standard cable shows. The script was written by a former stripper. No boundaries are sacred. The film was filmed in the style of real horror film, with violent vomiting, gruesome body dismemberment, and of course, horrified screams. Except this time, it's mostly the boys screaming. I mostly avoid horror films, but I love horror comedy, and I love seeing men scream in horror, so I left the theater completely entertained and wanting more. I look forward to Diablo Cody's and Karen Kusamo's future projects. They do seem to have a style all their own. I give this film a B.
You know, I agree with you about the misplaced humor. I don't, if what you mean by misplaced humor is she didn't have a handle on how to use the humor at all. What to me sums up the whole thing is the name Needy.
It was an entertaining film, and
that's subjective, of course, to the individual person. Like the film's entertaining.
I was not entertained. The audience and critics I saw it with were not entertained. Except I will admit it was a packed audience.
Packed audience? How do you mean? What do you mean packed audience?
The theater was full.
The theater was full of people. The guys went nuts during the lesbian kissing scene. Other than that, everyone hated it.
Are you saying during the time that you saw the film?
Yes, when I saw the film.
Was it at pre-screening?
Yes.
Okay, I've noticed that during pre-screenings the audience is a lot more vocal than at regular theater because it's filled mostly with critics.
Actually, no, the majority of the audience is paid. It is members of the public.
And they didn't respond very well.
They did.
Anyway, the reviews, the pre-screens I've been to. Anyway, back to the point.
To me, what sums it up is the name.
I think Needy is awesome because she is portrayed first as this needy character, but then grows out of the neediness and actually takes.
But the point is that there's so little subtlety to the film that they take this needy character and call.
Subtlety? It's an entertaining. It's an entertaining joke.
That little subtlety is just insulting.
It's a movie that you go to watch and enjoy.
I will say this: I laughed out loud.
I turned my brain off and still didn't enjoy the film.
I laughed out loud at first at the fact they actually named the character Needy. That's funny.
Is that the only thing you noticed about the movie? Was that the character's name was Needy?
If you'll let me talk, then I can explain what I noticed about the film. I laughed out loud initially at the fact that the character was named Needy. I thought, oh, that's funny. But it didn't sustain 90 minutes. It was a joke that had to
So they should have changed the name halfway through the movie? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no.
The point is that's all there was to the film. It had simple old jokes that had been told a million times before and repeated them over and over again.
A more experienced, clever writer would have realized that was a joke that could not sustain a full movie, is what I'm saying.
And that's really all there was to the movie, was repeating the same 2 or 3 jokes, old jokes, over and over again.
Right, there was not an original joke in the film. It was just...
Except a few involving the Adam Brody character. Some of those were clever.
Those were clever. On the whole, what we had here was a completely uncensored episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Except that Buffy the Vampire Slayer was infinitely better in terms of acting,
but it had that same, you gotta love it, I'm funny, I'm witty feel that Buffy the Vampire Slayer has. It just wasn't done nearly that well.
Both of you despised the film, and I loved it.
I would not quite say I despised the film. I thought there were some really intriguing ideas.
Like, what did you find intriguing about it?
I thought that the basic idea of this high school setting and using demons and horror as a metaphor for popularity and the jealousy between these two girls, and turning that into a literal violent demon fight was a clever idea.
The trailer for this film was good. The trailer indicated
there was a lot of
Did you enjoy
potential.
anything about the film?
I agree with the point Patrick just made. There was an idea there for a clever film, and every once in a while you had moments where that came out. Most of those moments are in the trailer where you have lines where she says things like, "I'm not killing people, I'm killing boys."
Which was not in the film.
There was some clever
which was a shame.
concepts about teenage sexual politics and turning that into a sort of horror film setting had the potential for a movie that could have been very entertaining.
As far as the sexual dialogue, I was prepared. I mean, this was an R-rated horror film. You know, this is going to get sexually explicit. That being said, I thought it had easily the most disgusting sex scene I've ever seen in a movie. You know, I actually would rather have the scene in Watchmen where you saw everything than the scene in this where they describe graphically every detail of what they're doing.
Well,
like, my gosh, I do not need to hear that.
The writer had too much power in this case.
Way too much power.
Because the writer wanted to tell everything in words, not recognizing that film is a visual medium, and sometimes it's better to. And the fact that you had a very poor director. This was the director of Eon Flux.
Right. We've got one of the worst directors working today making this film.
I disagree. I enjoyed Ian Flux. It wasn't a great story.
Oh.
Yes. Okay. I'm the one.
Yes.
Along with Catwoman and other
and you are literally the only one.
And actually, I think that kind of comes down to, I think that you do have a very understanding preference for the very understandable sort of preference for these sort of female-based action films.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I wish that there had been stronger female characters because I very much I like that idea. I think that action films with stronger female characters is a really good idea that we need to see Hollywood pursuing more of. They just do it so poorly, and it's sad.
There were a lot of moments where I was like really trying to go with this, and if they have me, and it's like, no, they lost me. And that all came to a gigantic screeching halt with the really clunky audience insulting end, which again, could have been clever. I do blame that more on the directors hitting you over the head with it than the writers.
I think actually what it comes down to is this, that there's a film that you felt it achieved being, and that we thought it could have been, and we all like that movie. We disagree over whether the film achieved being that. Okay. You saw that in there, we didn't.
Yeah.
So,
but
we all agree there's a clever idea there.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about one of the most anticipated films of the year, Where the Wild Things Are. Don't go anywhere. Slick Flicks will be right back.
And welcome back to Slick Flicks. Director Spike Jonze is known for his quirky music videos and for his collaborations with unconventional screenwriter Charlie Kaufman, including Adaptation and Being John Malkovich. Now he's going in a different direction, turning to a beloved children's book, Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are. And here's Paul to let us know if Spike was born to be wild.
He certainly was. Adapting a classic children's book to the screen is a difficult task. After all, we're talking about taking a few pages of illustrations and simple prose and stretching them out to roughly 90 minutes. No less a talent than Oscar-winning director Ron Howard dropped the ball with his overcomplicated, charm-free retelling of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Thankfully, Spike Jonze, director of Adaptation and Being John Malkovich, has kept a certain surreal simplicity to his retelling of Maurice Sendak's classic tale of a young boy named Max, who travels to the land of the wild things. No, not Denise Richards and Nev Campbell. These are large, furry creatures whose personalities are bigger than their massive frames. Max quickly bonds with the wild things, especially the gruff but tender Carol, voiced by James Gandolfini, and is soon promoted to the office of King. The rest of the plot deals with Max's relationship with his mother, expertly played by Catherine Keener, and with the joy and angst of childhood. A beautiful, skillful, and mesmerizing film Jones' masterpiece wasn't really meant for children. They'll Love the Wild Things is created by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, but the somewhat slow pace and sophisticated themes may lose them. This is really a film about childhood for grown-ups, and properly taken as such, it's one of the best films to come out of Hollywood in a long time. Jones' visual talent and quirky sensibility are at his all-time zenith here. And in addition to Gandolfini, the voice cast of Catherine O'Hara, Forrest Whitaker, and many others all give humorous and touching performances. It may be a cliche, but this is a movie that will make you laugh and cry. It's hard to say if this will be remembered come Oscar time, but if it isn't, I'm just going to eat my feet off. Where the Wild Things Are is my current pick for Best Film of 2009, and I give it an emphatic A+. I'd give it a higher rating if one existed.
I totally agree. This is right up there with 500 Days of Summer
before you start, I
and
haven't seen
Hurt
that one,
Locker
actually.
for Best Films of the Year.
I just want to say real quick
Sure.
that before I heard your review on it, I actually thought that I really didn't like the film. I really had a big problem with it. But after hearing your review, I kind of understand that it was really a character-driven film that was not about, it's not about action. It wasn't so much about story as what was going on with the characters. And seeing it in that different light, now I understand kind of more about it. The reason I was frustrated is that when I saw the previews, and I saw those big giant characters, I thought this was going to be like a fantasy story. So I was really disappointed.
And you're touching on why there are a lot of people who don't like the film. This is a film that does ask a lot of its audience, because of course that's what you're going to expect from that.
I think ironically, this is one of the two most divided films of the year in terms of opinion, unless you're not counting the dichotomy between audiences and critics over Transformers, but this and Inglourious Bastards, you have the critics utterly
for or against,
or against, and really split down the middle. And it's just
ironically, possibly my top two films of the year at this point, although they couldn't possibly be more different, would be this and then Inglourious Bastards.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I guess that they were both character-driven films, so that's what they have in common. So maybe that's your style.
It is in many respects, but I do understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. And I'll say, I think people do have to be really prepared for what this is. You know, I saw this with an audience packed full of critics and kids.
Yeah, bad idea.
And the kids, the little kids, weren't ready for it. It was not right for them.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned that it's not a kids' movie, because a lot of people are going to see the previews without doing any research and taking their kids to it, and the kids are going to be disappointed because it's not.
And we should point out, it's not that this is a film that's inappropriate for kids. It's that it's not. That it may very well not hold their attention very well.
Yeah.
This is a surreal art house film. It's not. You expect a film with giant Muppets to be more of a kids' movie, and this is. If you're familiar with Spike Jonze' work, you know that his work is very surreal and strange and kind of unlike other films.
You know what? When I was watching it and I kept hearing Carol's voice, and I was like, I know that voice from somewhere. And then about 3/4 through the movie, I realized that it was James Gandolfini speaking for the character, and that actually scared me, because I was like, there's this, he's starting to lose his temper, and it's this mafia guy. That is going to happen.
You know, that actually may have been my favorite scene in the film, where you take this character that I had just completely loved throughout, and then he did start to lose his temper, and it did get genuinely scary for a moment to me, from a child's perspective.
But then you realized that he was really just a big child himself,
well, see,
who had the same
scarier
fears. Agreed, and that was what I loved about this film. Quickly, I'm going to get on a bit of a soapbox here with what we're talking about. To me, this movie should be looked at as a wake-up call to audiences. You know, don't just go into a movie based on the trailer, especially if you're a parent taking your kids. Bother to find out something about this movie, whether it truly is aimed at kids.
Exactly.
Remember that a trailer,
like Pan's
above all else, a trailer is not meant to give you a sense of what the movie is. A trailer is meant to talk you into forking over your money.
Right.
Pure and simple. That's all it is.
Pan's Labyrinth, when there had been family taking their kids.
But boy, and a parent who brought their kid to Pan's Labyrinth is going to be really, really disappointed.
I really like the point that you made there. about a trailer is just enticing you to see.
It's a commercial.
It's not to help. It's not meant to help you. It's meant to help them. And while I already said this film is, in terms of any potential offensive content, is appropriate to children, I'm just going to go ahead and take a little bit of a tangent that the same thing is doubly true of the rating system. The rating system is not there to help viewers. It's there to protect Hollywood. So that's not a good indicator of whether a film is appropriate for children or not.
So by all means, take the time to look into a film before. I mean, you want to have some sense of surprise, obviously. I know I do. But just, this is a movie that you have to enjoy for what it is, not what you expected it to be. And in a sense, I think all three of the movies we reviewed today are about the question of, is it the movie that you expected it to be, or is it the movie that it was?
Now, Yelena, when we were discussing this film a little bit before the shoot, you said that you found it predictable. Elaborate on that.
Yes, you knew. I love fantasy. So when a little boy runs away and floats away to this magic island of all these monsters, I knew that the movie was going to end with him floating back to his little home and being home the same night.
Okay,
and so I thought that was disappointing.
Okay,
I hate movies where the whole movie is either a dream or a fantasy, where the actual character didn't actually experience the situation.
Okay, I can see your point there. One thing I did like in this one is that I felt like you weren't sure whether he'd experienced or not. Again, I like the whole surreal quality of this. But I'll concede it was predictable.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was supposed to be unpredictable. I think this was more about the characters and the emotion of it. But I can completely see if you were expecting a more elaborate story-based fantasy, that could be disappointing.
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from.
On the whole, there's just no arguing this was an interesting film, and Spike Jonze did a great job. I thought he fared far better without Charlie Kaufman than Charlie Kaufman fared without him with last year's clunker Synecdoche, New York, however you call it. All right, to borrow a phrase from Monty Python, and now for something completely different. It's time for you to review us. And please go easy on us. As promised in our last episode, we're going to be showcasing the various opportunities for film students making films here at Salt Lake Community College's film program. And on this episode, we thought it would be fun to present to you a collaboration between the three hosts of Slicc Fliccs entitled The Milgram Experiment.
The film is based on the true story of controversial experiments conducted in the 1960s by Dr. Stanley Milgram, and the film is directed by our co-host, Paul Gibbs. So let's have a look at this Salt Lake Community College production.
Ich folgte Reihenfolgen. Ich war bloß ein Sender mit sehr kleiner Kraft. Ich habe nie irgendetwas, groß oder klein gemacht, ohne im Voraus zu erhalten durch Anweisungen von Adolf Hitler.
Express instructions of Adolf Hitler or any of my superiors. You believe this crap? The guy's a psychopath. They all are.
What, the whole country?
The Nazis.
Okay, all right. Who were Nazis? They were average Germans, right?
No, average people don't do the things they did.
Then why did they? No, seriously, I want to hear your hypothesis.
Okay.
Is there something intrinsic in the German psyche, the part that tells us the difference between right and wrong, that's just missing?
Look, the way it was set up, the administration...
Richard, the administration didn't do this, okay? The people did it. They did it to each other. Why would they do that?
Wait a minute. You're having an idea. Now, I told you to stop doing that.
Only a little idea.
Stop. Don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, sure thing.
Sure thing. Just listen to what I'm saying. Don't,
Talk to you later. Hitler was giving orders, Eichmann was giving orders, but somebody had to be following those orders, or else none of this ever happened. A lot of people had to be following orders. And that's what fascinates me.
Sasha, I was wondering, has anybody ever, called you a communist? Or your family? I was just thinking, with the Russian heritage and everything.
Yeah, we had some problems. I was asked a lot of questions. Why? Do you think I'm a communist?
No, of course not. I was just thinking, back when I was in college, there were a bunch of professors who got asked to testify before HUAC. They refused, and so they were all fired. Just because they wouldn't do what they were told to do. And you want to know how many people stepped forward to complain, to stand up for what we knew was right?
How many?
Not one. Not a single solitary person, including me. I let it happen. Why'd I do that?
You won't get people to go along with this. They'll see right through your little experiment, Stanley.
That's the point of the experiment, to see what people will do.
Stanley, there's no reason to run an experiment when you already know what the outcome's going to be.
I hate it when you call me Stanley. We're not close enough for it to denote familiarity, so I always feel it just denotes condescension.
It's very astute of you, Stanley.
You don't like me because you think I'm too young.
I didn't say I don't like you. You're new here. You're starting too early to try to rock the boat.
I am not rocking the boat.
yes, you are. Look, we all remember that committee meeting that you skipped because of, what was it?
Rosh Hashanah?
Whatever.
I'm sorry if that inconvenienced you, but since that particular holiday was scheduled 5,722 years ago, I considered it a prior commitment. Somehow I doubt they'd schedule a meeting on Christmas Day.
That's not the point.
Then what is the point?
People in a civilized society behave according to the dictates of their conscience.
You're presupposing a lot.
That people have consciences?
No, that society is civilized.
It sounded like it might be fun, or at least interesting.
I didn't really know what I was getting into. I need a little extra money, so I figured, give it a shot.
Does punishment help us to learn? That's what we're here to find out.
What are you gonna do? You gonna bring in a nun and have her smack our knuckles with a ruler?
No, something a little more scientific than that. One of you will be assigned as the teacher, the other as the learner. The teacher will read off a series of word pairs, just simple memory tests. If the learner answers correctly, then the experiment will continue. If he answers incorrectly, then the teacher will administer an electric shock. Are there any other questions?
Well, a couple of years ago I was in a veterans hospital in West Haven, and they found a heart condition. It's really nothing very serious, but if I'm going to be getting these shocks, I'd like to know, how strong are they? How dangerous?
No, they might be painful, but they're not dangerous.
I started with the belief that each person who entered the laboratory was free to accept or reject the dictates of authority. Please select one.
I guess that would make me the learner then.
The teacher and the learner will be in separate rooms at all times. They will be able to hear but not see each other. With each wrong answer, the voltage of the shock will increase, reaching a maximum of 450 volts.
I'll read a series of word pairs. You try and remember the order of the words.
Okay.
The words are dog, ball, kite, boat, fish, and train. What word came after kite?
Boat?
That's correct. On to the next set of words. Bell, book, blimp, beetle, bear, bottle. What word came immediately after book?
Beetle?
Sorry, that's incorrect.
250 volts.
I was hurting him, but I didn't know why I was hurting him.
Dr. Milgram was different than I expected. Are you ready to continue?
I guess.
The words are then, there, that, those, these, and this. What came after there?
Those?
That was a hard one. What if we just...
300 volts.
I'm sorry, that's incorrect. I felt like I had to do what he was telling me to do. I mean, he was a professor. He obviously knew what he was doing.
Ah! Ah! Ah!
350 volts.
Guilty? No. No, I don't feel guilty. I mean, the guys were so stupid. He deserved to get shocked. I mean, really, these were simple questions. And the guy just kept missing them again and again. It was actually kind of funny.
350 volts.
Stop this! Stop it! You're killing me!
Look, I don't want to do this anymore.
The experiment requires that you continue.
I didn't feel like I was there giving him those punishments. It was like I was sitting there watching someone else push the button. I wanted to tell him to stop, but I didn't.
He said he had a heart condition. I think we really might be hurting him.
It is absolutely essential that we continue.
Who's going to be responsible for this?
I am responsible. Please continue.
Fine. What the professor was doing was probably wrong. But it's not like I had a choice in the matter.
You have no other choice. You must go on.
I can't.
Continue.
This is unacceptable. The strain you're putting these people through is staggering. What on earth do you hope to achieve?
I am trying to shed a little light on the issue of man's inhumanity to man.
These are people, not guinea pigs.
You haven't met some of them.
You are torturing these people.
I am studying them.
You are mentally and emotionally abusing these people, and for what? How far do you intend to push this?
It is absolutely essential that we continue.
450 volts.
It could kill him. I won't do it.
You will not be held responsible for anything that happens. We've been over that. Continue.
no.
Of course, there were no electric shocks. It was all for show. 65% of the participants administered the 450 volts of electricity, though many of them were uncomfortable doing so. At some point, every participant paused and questioned the experiment. Some of them even went so far as to ask to pay back the money they were being paid to do the experiment. Only one participant refused to administer shocks beyond the 300 volt level, and no one stepped in to halt the experiment at any point.
I think the Nazis were afraid of the Jews. You know, they were conditioned, they were taught to fear this mysterious outside force and thereby to eliminate it. But I think they were more afraid of the people who were telling them to be afraid. Because you see, a mystery, an outsider, that can harm you in some abstract way, that's scary. But an authority figure, a government, that can tell you what you have to be afraid of and punish you if you're not, well, that's terrifying.
You know, one of my favorite things, or one of the things I was most happy with about how this film turned out, is that Yelena is a terrific cinematographer. And we insult her enough on the show that I want to take this moment to just say I could not have been more thrilled and more impressed with what you brought to the film, both in terms of the lighting and what you did with what you added to the shot selection and the framing of shots.
Gosh, thank you.
It was a great experience working with you on this, and if this gets into any more film festivals, I'd really like to see this get into one where they have an award for cinematography, because I think you deserve one for this.
It did play at the Salt Lake Film Festival. You know, I really want to avoid getting into actually reviewing our own film because I mean,
but we can praise each other.
And sure, but I just find it amusing. I think that it is going to be kind of surprising for some of our viewers to watch some of the huge arguments we get in here and the name calling and everything, and then to discover that we actually really work very well together as a team.
Along very, very well. I loved working with you guys. It was absolutely fabulous. Not having to direct, just sit back kind of and work the camera. That was really fun.
Right.
And the Milgram experiment, I mean, it's a great story too. I loved it. It's something that's true, it's real, and it's fascinating.
It is a really interesting subject. I actually came across it in my first semester here, it was thinking about making it in the Production 1 class and then in Production 2, but it was a little bit ambitious in some respects for a student film because of all of the things we had to do with capturing the time period. So I kind of drug my feet for a long time on making this movie, and then finally decided now is the time that I really wanted to, because I thought I do think it's an interesting story, and hopefully the film does justice to that story and gets you kind of thinking about some of those questions, because it is such a fascinating historical incident that I hope that we were able to make a film that does some justice to it.
Me too, and I just have to add quickly that if you as a viewer recognized actor Darren Ewing from his brilliant performance in the cult classic Troll 2, then I just want to say you have to get out more often.
And that's it for this episode. Join again soon when we'll have some new exciting films to talk about, both from Hollywood and from right here on campus.
Until then, please turn off your cell phones and don't talk to the screen. It can't hear you.